Well. Welcome back to another live emerging franchise roundtable. And I have with me the man, the myth, the legend, and we're going to have some other folks drop in theory. But Joe Caruso is back after a lengthy absence. The kryptonite was flown to another area, and he therefore rebounded his strength by the red planet. Um, Welcome, Joe.
Good evening, Micah. How are you?
Doing great. It's let me tell you, month 18 in franchising for me is it's it's an amazing thing, having gone through the first 12 months of franchising and kind of seeing, what the some of the to-dos are, the not to-dos, and building a network of trustworthy people, which it frankly takes a long time. Yeah, I'm proud of where we are. I feel like we're doing okay.
Well, I will say it was brilliant and clever of you to launch a franchise program in the middle of a pandemic. I think that I can't think of a better time to launch a gym franchise in the middle of a pandemic. Brilliant idea.
Well, are you trying to tell me that launching a gym franchise when gyms are getting targeted by governments out there and limited capacity and restrictions in the middle of a black swan event that happens once every 110 years um, wasn't a masterful thing to do? Is that the irony of this whole thing?
I'm gonna go with brilliant and clever.
I agree. Actually,
I might even add in brave and courageous.
there's a lot of brave and courageous labels being bandied about today for various reasons. But it was auspicious timing, to say the least. But I think at the end of the day, it taught me a whole bunch of. It kind of lines up with my journey, I guess, in many respects. This, not exactly knowing when and how to do specific things, but I launched it, and here we are. I have an interesting story to tell years down the road.
Well, once you get, I mean, if you're doing franchising right and you build out an initial location to refine the offering, you get proof of concept. You go into the legal formation and franchise disclosure document creation mode. You have no way of knowing there's going to be a pandemic. I mean, you're already in. What we're going to say? Oh, I just spent all this money for all of this work, and let's just stop right now, because I got to tell you that attorney still wants to get paid.
Yeah, it's true.
And all the other things you've lined up, it's like, all right, and you have something that has an indeterminate length of time.
Right.
When COVID first came out, we did not know that it wouldn't last, but maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all waiting for it to end soon, and soon never came. And here we are, over 2 years later, and we still have remnants of it. Not to say that everything's back to normal, because everything is certainly not back to normal. But here we are.
Well, you're right about that. It's almost like you put the parachute on, you're flying in the plane, you're at the edge of the airplane, the jump point, and you basically have a decision. Like, you're already there. You can either jump or not jump, and so that's kind of where we were. And so you're right. Like, the bills are piling up. You have all this. You've done a lot of the work. Years of work based off the business system. Months of work based off the franchise system. And at some point you have to decide to move forward or not. And so whether what that means, whether it's a slow moving at the beginning or whatever, is something that I guess I've had to deal with. And then fundamental lack of understanding with everything is, franchising is this weird thing. It's not a, it's popular. It's been around forever. There's a lot of opinions on it, but it really is this weird, not really conventional way of doing business, specifically forming a franchise business and doing it. Like the interactions are different than any other interaction you've had. And then, of course, you have the looming eyes of the federal government over you. And then, of course, people who are sophisticated, who are kind of waiting in the weeds to take advantage of you. And then you have people who have no idea on the other side, and you're trying to convince those people to buy it. There's a lot of both good and evil almost associated with it in some respects.
Yeah, I think there is some counterintuitiveness to franchising, and for a seasoned business owner outside of franchise to become a franchisor, and they find out what all the steps are. And the first thing to say is, like, why do I have to do all of these steps? Why can't I just sell my brand to people and sign a contract? They operate the business. They pay a royalty. I provide them support. Why does it have to be so complicated? But it is.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for a very long time. It's not complicated to me. That's only because I have experience and practice. There's lots of other things that are very unknown to me and I'm ignorant of. And there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. I mean, ignorant just means you don't know. Willfully ignorant, now that's a different thing entirely. You don't want to be that, because we all know people that are willfully ignorant and they've gone to the Dunning-Kruger school of stupidity. You don't want those people. But the thing I found with new franchisors, and when their lawyer or consultant tells them about what they can say about the potential of the business to a prospective franchisee.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one that they have the most difficulty with, because why can't I just tell them what I'm doing in my MELD location? Why can't I just show them the numbers? Why is that so hard? If the prospective franchisee says that they want to open one of these up on Marlboro in the just out the back bay, and they ask me how much do I think it'll do? Why can't I just say that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't, because the FTC rule says you can't. It does say a way that you can tell them what your pilot location that has proof of concept does, but it's the manner in which you can convey that information. And the only way to do it lawfully is to have that information in your franchise disclosure document, in your item 19 financial performance representation. Now, I also think that lawyers, love them, hate them, do a really bad job of explaining it to people. I explained it so anybody listening would kind of understand it. I don't know why they have to belabor that point and can't explain it that way, because it would be a whole lot faster for their client to figure out what they need to do. Now, the client might have questions like, well, why is that? And then they can explain it. And there are valid reasons. We won't go into them now why that is or how this came about. And then the second question that the prospective franchisee would have about a particular location, after you signed a franchise agreement with them, well, you're free to talk to them about the potential for that location. Now, hopefully you're talking about it based on some demographic information and other data that says, based on these things, we have so many people in the target audience within this geographic area that would go to a MELD Fitness. We think we can get this many members, and this is what we think we can charge per member.
Right.
Well, now you can come up with those things. Thing is, you have to do it after they've signed a franchise agreement.
Right.
Because now they're not predicating their purchase of the franchise based on that claim of potential. They've already made the decision. Now you're talking about a particular location.
Right.
And you can still get in trouble for that because people get sued all the time for, having discussions about it, but it's not a violation.
Right.
And some people might agree or disagree about that. I think after you sign the franchise agreement, you can talk very freely and thoughtfully about the potential for the business.
Yeah, it's these learning lessons that I'm kind of bumping up against, even in franchise sales. As an example, let's talk about this one in particular. Let's talk about one of the latest learning lessons I've learned with a candidate that I just had come through the pipeline, and it was so. Here's the principal lesson, which is that always have both husband and wife. So, how about this? I was under the impression that if you talk to a spouse, that, like, especially at the beginning, that eventually it might be easy for you to bring the other spouse in, and you can have a conversation with them, not all the way down the road or even when you're about to sign the franchise agreement, but like if you're having after the initial conversation, you know then bring if the person is in a relationship, have them bring the spouse or partner in, talk to them both, you go from there. However, which you run the risk of, and what I've realized is that you run the risk of the person, and if they're so excited about the concept, going back and trying to explain in only the way that the founder can why it's a good reason to be involved with the concept. That was the specific case in our case. And they don't do as good a job, of course, because they're not the founder. They don't have this backstory. Even though they may have heard it from you and understood it, they still don't. It's hard for them to make those little connections and answer those specific questions to the spouse about why the person should be excited about joining your team. So one of the things I learned is, look, from the first meeting, if you find out that a person has a partner, both business partner or relationship partner, you should invite both of them even to the initial meeting so that you can address them both at the same time. And then that really will help flush out concerns, I think, that they may have, and so that they can both hear the founder or CEO or a salesperson's development reps information from the beginning. What's your take on that? When to introduce a partner into the conversation, and do you get screwed sometimes by having these conversations with one person and then having them kind of talk their way out of it by being so excited about it?
Well, sooner the better, always. Um, Everybody that's a friend of the primary person that's interested in your franchise, especially for people who've never been in business before that think about becoming a franchisee, are enemies of the deal. And it's not because they don't like Micah or they don't like MELD. It's they're agnostic to the franchise. You could be offering them the best McDonald's location in the world,
Mhm.
and nobody that's your friend wants to be responsible for you buying a franchise and failing and coming back to them and saying, Micah, what a bonehead thing you did encouraging me to buy that franchise. I am now bankrupt. I lost everything. Guess what? We are no longer friends. So, because they have that fear, not that that would happen exactly that way. That's an extreme example. But it is always safer for the people closest to the prospective franchisee to dissuade them from doing it based on having almost no information or very little information, because that is the safest route for that trusted friend to take. On the spouse to spouse situation you described earlier, the franchise prospect that went to the meeting, that went back to talk to their significant other, they may do a terrific job talking about the things that they found fabulous about your business concept, the things that they liked about it, the things that answered the concerns that they had. Problem is, they may have nothing to do with the concerns that the spouse has. They may have they are thinking about something entirely differently, especially if you're talking about the prospective franchise buyer that's going to be operating the business. And I would say the trailing spouse is going to be doing whatever they're currently doing. Or they're a nurse, they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, they're a garbage collector. I mean, it doesn't matter. Their life isn't going to change so much in terms of what they do for a living. Their life is going to change a whole lot because their spouse's life has changed.
Right.
And they are more interested in how it's going to impact the relationship that they have, their family, and a myriad other things. Oh, not to mention their finances.
Right. Oh yeah, of course. And so what are some ways, so if we have an emerging franchisor who is actually in that situation, that's one of my advisors for MELD, the franchise business, was saying that there's excuses and there is objections, and they're different. And your sophistication with being able to understand what is an excuse and what is an objection can really help color your ability to sell. How do you overcome? So now so what you described is an interesting and a well put, and it's not entirely irrational, the fear of the unknown, because going into business in general invokes both rational and irrational fears, which a person has to wade through. Now we're talking about franchising, though. How do you get through that? Now, the obvious answer is, other than have a conversation with the spouse. However, you now have to, after you've spoken to one partner or spouse, you now have to attempt through the spouse, who may have communicated well or miscommunicated, get that other person back to the table, or to the table in general. How do you drive that behavior?
Well, this has more to do about your sales self-discipline than about the prospect. And like it or not, for all the parties, somebody's got to be in control of this thing.
Right.
And it always should, the process of buying a franchise, the franchise seller must be in control. In terms of whether they make the purchase or not, well, obviously that's within the buyer's control. They're going to make a decision at some point. Mm-hmm. They do not know what the steps are in order to get to the point where they can make a decision. So they need you to be their guide. The self-discipline part comes in when you say, all right, Joe, we had a great conversation about MELD. You qualify, you have the requisite net worth and liquidity, so you've got the capital to be able to do this. You have an 800 credit score, and your wife has a terrific job. So yes, I would love to consider you as a candidate for MELD. When can I talk with you and your wife? When I say, well, I'm kind of leading this thing, and it's really just going to be me. It's my business, and my wife supports me in anything I do. You have to call BS right then and there. Says, yeah, Joe, I understand it. I hear you. But for us to move forward with this, we need to have a call with you, your wife, and me. That's what we must do. When can that happen? And you need to shut up and wait till I answer and give you a time. And if I am going to be, if I'm going to press against making that decision or that agreement with you, because franchise sales is like a lot of complex sales, is a series of micro agreements till you get to the actual final agreement. And if you can't negotiate that with me, and I can't negotiate the meeting with my wife, Micah, and me, well, we're not going to be able to put a deal together. It's just not going to happen. Right. Because my wife is likely to say, no, Joe, you're out of your friggin' mind investing X amount of dollars in a MELD. What the hell do you want to do with that? Mm-hmm. We have a great life here. We don't need to do anything. I have a great pension. We have great savings. Why are you risking all of that? We're not doing it because she doesn't know anything about it, and she was going to kill the deal at the end. So if you acquiesce to my demands that it's all me, chances are, it's not 100%, but chances are you're not going to get a deal done. So the discipline part comes in. If I press against you and say that I can't make that happen, or I'd have to check, or I'm namby-pamby about it, you have to say, okay, Joe, I will call you next week after you've talked to your wife, and we'll set an appointment then. Or you could say to Joe, all right, I've got this date next week at 3 p.m. We can do a Zoom call with the three of us. How does that sound? Can you make that happen with your wife? You assign me the homework of making that appointment happen. Because if I can't do that, I really can't be a very good franchisee.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think that basically what you described is once you have a good rhythm with the person and you kind of make that soft assessment, or let's call it first level assessment, that they are really potentially a good fit. You have to actually go slower instead of faster in some respects, just until you get to a certain point in the process. Because if you move too fast, that could unsettle someone. They get happy feet. Next thing you know, they they want to cut and run. And I can kind of see that kind of happening. I think that you're right about. So looking back at that interaction I had, I think I was moving that person too fast down the pipeline. And in some ways, I think I may have. So they were ready to move. What I didn't do, though, was consciously involve all the requisite influences in his life, i.e., his spouse, because those are important conversations to have. And I treated that conversation as more of a side conversation instead of giving it the weight, of course, that it deserves. And that's not a mistake I will make again, and a good learning lesson.
Yeah, and there are subtle but important things you can do, and it really depends on the other party, the spouse. If they're a professional and say they're on LinkedIn, why you have them on the call? I mean, you should already know they're on LinkedIn because you looked them up. You know their name. You should know
Yep.
that they're on LinkedIn, and um, and you have to really focus on them because oftentimes the primary spouse will dominate the conversation. And if you let them, they will. And you'll never know what the spouse is really thinking because you haven't asked them. But one of the really nice techniques is to say to them, hey, Pam, I see you're on LinkedIn. If it's okay with you, I'm going to send you a connection request. That is unbelievably respectful. One, that you notice that they were on LinkedIn, which means that you learned something about them. The other is you ask them permission to do it. It is highly respectful. And now you could say, and after we connect, if you have any questions, just direct message me on LinkedIn. Of course, you have my phone number, but if it's not, either or. But I'm available to you to answer anything you need anytime. And that really builds a lot of confidence and comfort. And having the trailing spouse to the primary purchaser be comfortable is paramount. You really do need that. And if they feel like they can call you and you've respected it, because those are building blocks of respect, is that even though your husband's going to be running the business, you guys are franchisees together. And certainly they will know that when they get the franchise agreement and they see the personal guarantee, and when they find out they're both personally guaranteeing this thing, they will know that they're both in this together.
Right. Well, fair enough. So I have a topic I wanted to bring up that was mentioned. I saw online in one of the social media groups that I'm in, one of the franchise groups, whatever. But it was basically around emerging franchisor, um, what they should have in place already. And we may have touched on this before in previous roundtables, but what they should have in place already as the emerging franchisor. Now, the thing is, I think there's some utility in being in being an emerging franchise where you can, the whole shucks, gee golly, we have the system, we know the business, but we're emerging franchisor. There's some latitude that people give you and not having everything kind of bolted down. I think in previous roundtables, you spoke about it as building the plane as you fly. Um,
That
and
was Troy, but I think I mimicked him. But yeah, Troy says that a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I say it too, but he says it more than I do.
right. Right. And so and I understand also that I've probably overly spent time on those things for MELD franchise, which probably in some respects have slowed me down a bit in the sales side because I've been focusing very heavily on getting other aspects of the system, the back end system for the franchise company actually in place and structured. But in your experience, what's the expectation from a new franchisee to an emerging franchise company, and what they should have ready, other than the operations manual? How much of the little nuanced things that, for instance, a sophisticated franchisor has in place should they have, and what is really like, well, that's not really a big deal?
Well, most franchise buyers are not going to read the disclosure document the way that they should. They're going to take it. They're going to thumb through it. It's a lot of information. Really easy to read. It's just a lot of information.
Right.
And if you've never seen one before, it's like somebody handing you the Bible for a new religion.
Right.
Unless you know something about that religion, I got to read the whole thing. I
It's
got to
that.
read. I don't know. I'm not really interested in changing religions. I like the one I've got.
Right.
Um,
It's a half a ream of paper. I know because I had to send an FDD to Kentucky.
yeah, I mean, it's hard. Here's the thing that for startup franchisors that need to understand, and this is really true of franchisors that have 20 units or less, is the franchise buyers, they're buying you. They're buying from you. It is more of a leap of faith to buy into MELD franchising than it is to buy into Taco Bell.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what Taco Bell is. If the CEO of Taco Bell retires, they get a new CEO. It's the king is dead, long live the king. It's like they don't miss a beat. I mean,
Right.
but you retire. It's like, well, wait a minute. You got, we got like 5 franchisees, 3 franchisees, or I'm the first franchise. What happens? The level of confidence that franchise buyer has in Micah is a completely different story. And it will be true from the first franchise you sell, and then 20, 30, 50. It definitely took 20 is my opinion, but it could be even past that. And they're going to want to know your vision for MELD, what you're going to do, why you're different than the competition, and they're really asking questions. All right, I've been to your location. I like it, but why should I trust you?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I trust you? And why? And tell me how you built a better mousetrap.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to want to know those things. They're buying you. It doesn't mean you have to walk around with with a hangdog look or genuflect in front of them to get them to buy. Doesn't mean that at all. You tell your story, make sure the story is true, and this is what we're doing. And I mean, I don't know the exact story, but it might go something like this. Right now, we're focused on the Boston market. We're willing to go as far as Kentucky to the west. We're going to go as far south as to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and that's where we're focused right now because we can service those areas, and we're looking for a franchisee that can, in the Kentucky market, we're looking for people that can commit to doing multiple units, and in the Boston market, we're taking both single and multi-unit operators. You need to know that. You need to be able to say it really just like I just said it, even though I just made it all up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And I feel that greatly. A lot of the meetings I've had with prospects and some candidates, it did feel a lot of, there is a lot of self-justification for why they should buy a franchise, from you. And, I think that for some franchisors, emerging or micro emerging, understand this, and they're comfortable with it, or they just think that they should be in a different place. I think that there's some utility though in kind of like embracing that role of being a micro franchisor role and having a person buy into you because you have the experience, how to operate the business, and I think that people will endear themselves to you if they know that you have a consistent track record of building and running a profitable business. And the fact that oftentimes that they get you as a support system from the beginning, even if they don't get you long term, and you tell them not to tell anybody else that you've given them that level of support when you first started with them, I think is something that goes a long way into establishing their quote reasons why they should kind of go with you. Plus, one of the things I'm sure they get excited about is their ability to actually influence some changes early on. And for some people, that's a big, people who are kind of slightly entrepreneurial have a big hang up about not being able to influence anything. And not that every change will be accepted, but the fact that they might have, some of that influence is a big deal. And so maybe all the nuances of those systems as a franchise company are not necessarily as important as you getting your founder story right, what your product is, getting it into the hands of people, and being able to just be there for them as they create remarkable unit economics for themselves. Maybe those are the basics at the beginning for the first few.
Well, I think you're touching on something that's important for the first franchisees that you recruit, and if you tell them and they feel like they're founding franchisees, and you can explicitly tell them, I am looking to recruit people that have the talent and capital to be able to build these, but moreover, I'm looking for those founding franchisees that are going to help me develop a multi-location MELD franchise system that we can all be proud of. If that kind of story resonates with them, and you kind of describe the person that might resonate with, that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And if they and it also it would be nice if it's actually true.
Right. Well, right. That's right.
Because here's the reality, and this is something that is not really relevant to the franchise buyer. It is relevant to you as a franchisor. But think about this: the way that you will train your first 20 franchisees will be different for almost every franchisee up until number 20. And because it won't be the same, because you're just learning how to train people.
That's
and
right.
not everybody's the same. And you're going to find out that the best laid plans of Micah and men, you know what? I thought this would work on the training, but it really doesn't. And we're going to have to do this differently. I'm going to have to step back, change this, and I'm going to have to do it all over again because it didn't work. That is actually okay.
Right.
Because to assume that you have figured out all of the elements of franchising, the training, the marketing, the support, site selection with one location, that would be silly.
Yeah.
That would be just silly.
Right.
And you know what? I would even say that to people. You know what? I'm going to give you 100% of me to get you, to have you be successful, Mr. Potential Franchisee.
Right.
You're going to have to roll with the punches with me. What I need you to tell me is when things aren't working and help me fix them.
Hmm.
Tell me what you need. And I may need to hire somebody else to help us, but I'm going to do it.
Right.
Or if you've got some ideas that would work better, and you tried them out, yeah, let's make them systemic. Let's make them part of the system.
Yeah, that level of ruthless self-awareness for your concept, I think, is a necessary, add-on to what you're doing. I mean, I think the reality is, by coming off as trying to be this big brand, that has no flaws or has figured it out over 30 years and all this other stuff, like, I think you're really risking. I think you risk more in that way than you do if a person sees you as an endearing micro emerging brand that has the potential to scale, that they can be an early adopter in, um, and help you, and help along the way. People are attracted. Some people are attracted to being part of growth, in the growth minded, and some people need stability. The whole Zoracle franchisee profile system is supposed to, for instance, identify the psychometric traits of a of a person who needs more of a structured franchise system versus someone who's more of a entrepreneurial spirit and thinker. But I think as a franchisor, you know, being realistic about where you are, telling the right story, and getting your franchise prospects or candidates excited about the potential of doing business with you is probably just as important early on as anything.
Yeah, I mean, it is very, very hard to select your first franchisees, because oftentimes the people that are willing to say yes right away are the wrong people, and it is really, really hard, especially when someone can stroke a check,
Yep.
not to take it. And that goes back to the self discipline. You have to have sales self discipline in when a prospective buyer is doing something that's just not going to work. You have to have the fortitude to be able to say no.
Right.
I really do need to talk to your spouse, and we need to talk together. That's
Mhm.
important. Or yes, I know you can stroke a check, but we haven't talked about who's going to operate. We haven't talked about any of the finer aspects of it, but you're ready to go. That scares the crap out of me. I'm a franchisor, and that scares the crap out of me that you're ready to go and you haven't done anything to figure out whether you're well suited to do this.
Right. What's funny? I wonder if so. Okay, so you said something that's interesting, which is those first one, two, three, whatever, however many franchisees are really the right ones are really hard to get. If you are picky, I think there's a balance between, or excuse me, there is a chasm between you wanting to get the first right franchisees and just get started, and having to balance those two feeling. It's like a push pull kind of thing. It's like, oh, there's someone who's ready to go, but I also need the right franchisee. What it means, I think, logistically, is that you end up having to wait longer to get rolling where you thought it might be faster. And then it compounds if you have pressure of observing around you some other franchise businesses in your space that seem to be replicating like rabbits. And you're sitting here trying to get the good early stage franchisees. There's this whole, you have to balance your eagerness to get rolling with the realities that you need to serve. You're not serving your brand long term by just taking absolutely anyone who would come in, and therefore it could take getting started like much longer than you initially anticipated.
Well, I would first I would stop comparing myself to some of the other gym franchises that have 500, 1,000 locations, because they're probably spending on cost per franchise sale 15, 20, maybe even $30,000 per deal.
Mhm.
And if they're properly calculating it, and even some very well-established franchisors don't calculate their cost per franchise deal very well. So I would stop there. It's also a lot more comfortable if you're selling franchises when you have a lot of leads.
Mhm.
And when you only have one lead, it is hard to be disciplined because
Right.
you feel the scarcity. You say, geez, if I don't sell this to Joe, there's no next. There's no next. He's the only one I got right now.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, I think the way that you do your lead generation and your marketing has to be scrappier. It has to be more guerrilla oriented, and
Mhm.
it has to be closer to home.
Right. That's
I
right.
would not be spending marketing dollars to generate leads in Minnesota if I'm in Boston, Massachusetts.
Right.
That's silly. Don't do that.
You're not saying that because you're a Ravens fan either.
I am. I'm a Raisin fan because I live in near Baltimore. I've also lived in California. I've lived in
Uh-huh.
New York. So I have been a fan of whatever football team is closest to me. And technically, the Philadelphia Eagles, no, not. They're 15 miles further away. I
Yep.
could be an Eagles fan,
Right.
but I'm not. I'm a Ravens fan right now.
Well, you deciding between being an Eagles or a Ravens fan is me trying to is also gives me impetus to think about um the levels of hatred I should have on for you on the sports level. But it all depends on the mile marker that you're at. Should I not like Joe because he's an Eagles fan, or should I really not like Joe because he's a Baltimore Ravens fan?
Well, and it's funny. I use the comparison between the Eagles and Baltimore. Uh, if I had made the comparison between the Eagles, I mean, excuse me, the Ravens and the Steelers, I might have people with pitchforks on my front lawn right now
Mhm.
because Pittsburgh is pretty much the arch nemesis of every um, card carrying Ravens fan. And I grew up in New York, but I grew up in upstate New York. So I was close to Buffalo. Well, not super close. I mean, Rich Stadium was 3 hours away. The Meadowlands was about almost 4 hours away. Um, and I don't know anybody that is a Jets fan. So it was either the Giants or Buffalo for me.
Right.
And if if it was if one of them was in the Super Bowl, I would go with that one. Um, uh, and I might reluctantly go for the Jets being in the Super Bowl, I'm not sure that'll ever happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, well, the Jets, I there's no love lost with the Jets. Diehard Pats fan here, so there will be absolutely no rooting for them.
No,
Even
there's only one. They've only got one major fan. That's Gary V. He's the only one that loves the Jets.
well, he wants to buy them. That's
Yeah, but because he loves them.
but I'm not sure if Woody Johnson's giving that up anytime soon. So, all right. Well, Joe, we're about 45 minutes, so it's probably a good place to stop. But, we missed a few of our panel members, some sick, some commitments tonight. But we'll be back next month and we'll have a fresh new topic, which I will generate. But, this whole emerging franchisor journey thing is, it's a really interesting road, as I mentioned at the outset, and I'm excited about it, and I have some things going right now that I'm working on, to help establish and cement MELD as a player in the fitness space, because it's brand reputation is super important, and having people understand that and connect with it and what you do, your value proposition and brand promise, all those things are really important. So, so one of the things that we're doing is focusing on, a lot more on the corporate side to help drive the franchise side. Ultimately, I'll explain more once we kind of get more things rolling in the future. But for now, we're going to keep that stuff close to the vest. But it really is a game of where to apply the pressure, right? Like at the outset, do you apply pressure on the corporate level more, and do you apply pressure more to the franchisees, and finding them and let them validate, and or do you validate through multiple stores? Like, what do you do to ensure that you have at least a significant amount of validation opportunity for someone who's coming into your emerging franchise brand? And the where to apply pressure piece is really the hot button, to me, topic of like how to get the ball rolling. You have to have some kind of momentum on one level, on one level or the other, of some
Well,
sort.
and that is very difficult because um, when you become a franchisor, you have created a new business. So now you're running two businesses, two
That's right.
MELD businesses. You're running the MELD consumer end where people come and they go to your gym and they work out and they need attention, otherwise they will stop coming.
Hmm.
And then you've got the MELD franchise business, which has a whole different set of elements to it, and there's just not a lot of crossover. The activities you do during the day to run your MELD consumer business, gym business, and running your MELD franchise business, they're quite different, and
Yeah.
it is hard, especially if you're wearing both those hats. It is yeoman's work and a lot of learning, and it requires tremendous effort.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. No, I definitely agree with that. Well, thank you for all the visitors, for visitors, viewers. I mean, they could be visitors. If this was a few weeks ago, you would be visiting Joe in his hospital bed. But I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you very much. I am feeling 100% better. It's
And
like it
did you
never even happened.
did you get the answer for me whether or not the difference between the Chicago and the Detroit style deep dish? I was really concerned about that for multiple days. I couldn't sleep.
These they're the recipes, the way that they cook, the pans, but the really big difference for the Chicago. Actually, I'm answering the question. I was thinking Detroit and New York Sicilian. No, I don't, because I've never actually ever made a Chicago style pizza. I just haven't done it.
Yeah.
Um, and the recipes are. I know that the recipes are completely different.
Right.
There's cornmeal or semolina in the Chicago deep dish crust. It has a lot more oil in it. It bakes for like 40 minutes,
Wow.
whereas the Detroit, anywhere from 11, 12, maybe to 15 minutes. But the dough formulations are entirely different.
Yeah.
Um, and the crumb structure. I mean, they're like completely two different animals in
Yeah.
terms of pizza. And I don't dislike Chicago. I just have never made it. I've had it in Chicago.
Yeah. 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 Me too. And I'm not a big fan of it, actually. But I had to try it because I am also a pizza guy. But if you're watching this and you're trying to figure out what we're talking about, Joe is a pizza guy. He makes pizza. And I have a hobby level interest in making pizza, not as sophisticated as Joe. I will eventually buy a pizza book and figure out formulas and letting the dough rest for a couple days and how long to put it in. 40 minutes seems like 11 to 12 to 14 minutes seems like a long time.
Depends
Also,
on your oven,
yeah,
and of course anything that's cooked in a pan takes longer because
right,
before the pizza can cook, the pan has to get hot. So it's quite a bit different. But if you get an uni outdoor oven that gets up to 800 degrees, you can cook a pizza in a couple minutes,
right.
and that's pretty quick.
Well, I'm
Or
in,
if you get a pizza oven like I have in my kitchen, you can cook a pizza in a couple of minutes too.
well, when I'm in the area, I'm going to stop in for something. We'll see what it is. I was nearby. I was in Pittsburgh last week, so I wasn't. Well, I was close to, I guess, to West Virginia than to you, but but I was near the Panhandle. But next time I'm in the area, I will
Yeah,
not.
well, when you're crossing the Susquehanna River on I-95, you're at where I live
Okay.
because exit 89 is where I live off of, and my house is like 2.5 minutes from the interchange. So it's not very far. If you go too far, you'll just end up either in the river or in the bay.
Okay. Well, I know how to swim. That's the good part about it. But I'll look for the 10-bedroom, 8-bathroom house with the Mike Tyson logo on the gate. I know that's how you roll.
Now you'll look for a four-bedroom, four-bathroom house, um, and and a two-car garage. That's what you'll find.
Franchising has been good for Joe, as it should. Well, thank you. Thank you all for watching tonight. This live emerging roundtable will be on my podcast as well. Don't forget to check that out. The Common Sense, Show. You can search that in Spotify, Pandora, on Apple Podcasts. Joe, where can they find you?
They can find me primarily on LinkedIn. You find Joe Caruso on LinkedIn. Franchise Info is the name of our company. Franchise-info.ca is our website. And you can learn most everything and get to everything from me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah, and Joe is always doing some interesting polls on LinkedIn and just engaging with conversations about franchising industry, business in general sometimes, and other topics. But I find it really fascinating. There was a big one that you just posted. I haven't responded yet, but I saw it. I'm going to. But anyways, thank you for coming on tonight, and we'll talk soon.
Take care, buddy. Thank you. Good luck with the franchising.
Next month.